Hello and welcome to Chats, a television podcast, Season 4, The ChatzRoom. My name is Magellan, and I think tonight is really one of those nights when I should do exactly everything he tells me to do. It's Alan.
Whoa. Oh. Oh man. That's fun. That's fun
Yeah.
and true and always accurate.
You're my EP tonight.
I can't wait for the fake greeting cards that somebody makes that are like newsroom greeting cards, and one of them is like you can be my EP.
By greeting card, you mean like those little Valentine's Day?
Yeah, can you tell English is like my third language? Come on. All right. Not sure that's true. I'm pretty sure I'm just bad at words. As the kids say, thinking emoji.
How you doing, Alan?
Oh my god, I'm well. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome for asking.
Wow. How are we? Oh, it's very cold.
Yes, yep. We're in a bit of a snap.
That was a snap. No, it's. I always love when we do Sunday shows because I come back from work. I usually get a caffeinated beverage, and I get all comfy, and we kind of just make magic happen. We're basically magicians.
Yeah, it's sort of like that movie.
Burt Wonderstone.
Burt Wonderstone's Home for Imaginary Friends.
Magic Emporium.
Yeah.
Yours was better. I like yours. Burt
Thank
Wonderstone's Home for Imaginary Friends.
This is a show where we don't just talk about Burt Wonderstone. We also talk about the Burt Wonderstone of prestige cable television. Well, this isn't cable, it's HBO. But you know what I'm saying. Aaron Sorkin, specifically his wonderful...
His Wonderstone show.
His Wonderstone show, The Newsroom. Every week we watch 2 episodes of The Newsroom, and then we talk about them, and we enjoy ourselves while we're talking. While we're talking. And while we're watching, maybe we don't, maybe we do. I thought this week was a little bit better. This week we watched 2 episodes. Season 2, Episode 5, and Season 2, Episode 6. We'll talk about Episode 5 first, Newsnight with Will McAvoy. Written by Aaron Sorkin, directed by Alan Powell. How do we say this before?
We
Powell?
say it differently every week.
All right.
I think we agreed on Powell for now.
Alan Powell. Powell. And it aired August 11th, 2013, taking place on March 16th, 2012. Alan, what happened in Newsnight with Will McAvoy?
Well, John, this one's actually pretty simple. In this episode, as fighting erupts in Syria and investigations into the killing of Trayvon Martin begin, Will receives a surprise phone call from his father. Meanwhile, pictures of Sloane posing naked appear on the web, and Jim believes Maggie's performance at work is being affected by her time in Uganda. What did you think of Newsnight with Will McAvoy?
It was nice to take a break from the Genoa stuff, and it just felt like a first season episode where there was stuff about it that I had a problem with, but generally I liked the experience of watching it.
Genuinely,
yeah.
That's a very apt description. It felt like the olden times, especially when you consider like we're watching the Newsroom really, really fast. There was like a significant chunk break between the seasons, and it had been a while since people were used to that. We were in weeks and weeks of this Genoa stuff, and we have been, but even like doubly so
Right.
if you're watching it, and getting back to just like primarily being in the newsroom, centering on an actual real life crisis with minimal relationship drama, but there is some. Feels like it's almost like we've always wanted the Newsroom to be this.
Yeah, and it's an episode that is just told within the time span of a single episode of Newsnight.
Right,
Right. Which also has a sort of charm to it because we've had so many episodes that are like flashback 3 months. By the way, this takes place over the course of several days, montage, yada yada. There's just been a lot of time play, and this episode was very straightforward in that it's like, okay, single episode of Newsnight, pretty much real time, you're experiencing it, and the plots are straightforward. It's just character interactions, and that's it.
It felt like somebody had some sort of mandate that was like, we need to remind everybody why they should care before we wrap up Genoa next week. We
Yeah.
need like all of the characters to kind of get to this point where all of their storylines matter. Like that's the whole purpose of Mackenzie and Will's plot, which concerns Will, who we are again being told that we're supposed to like, because during one of the commercial breaks, he learns that his father is in the I almost said is in the McAvoy. He's in the hospital, and he finds out later. Like the cool thing is like he is, like you said, learning about this during all of the commercial breaks through family and through other channels. His father had a heart problem and ended up in the hospital, and he's like, it's probably fine. I'll leave him a voicemail so he knows that I heard about it. But like, we immediately realize that he's a Sorkin man character who, of course, doesn't have a good relationship with his dad, and he's like, neither of us care about each other enough to warrant me like making the call to him.
Right. Or it's not that he doesn't care, but maybe he's scared or something, or who knows what it is. Because his dad, we've been told that his dad was a drunk and that they've come into conflict with each other. So I liked this plot in the sense that I appreciated the interactions that Will and Mackenzie had with each other. There was, because usually their backstory in the show is played for drama in a way that's kind of annoying. But here their backstory was played for like intimacy. In the way where this really happens, where somebody that you used to be with, maybe they're one of the few people who understand like the relationship you have with your parents, and so you need to lean on them in this moment of crisis, even when you haven't been leaning on them or really been close to them for a while. So in that way, I appreciated it. But pretty much all of the Will's dad stuff has been communicated to us by telling.
Totally.
So that made it fall flat in a certain way. But I'd rather have this than other character stuff that's been going on.
And we do get some of that stuff, which is really unfortunate. But yeah, my biggest problem, like you said, is that it's so much of it is just conveyed to us. Like we never got to meet Will's dad. He lives and dies on these phone calls. Will finds out at the end of the episode that his father passed away in the hospital from an irregular heartbeat, basically, which is really sad. And he reacts to it with a maturity that I also kind of like. This way that he's like, oh, like that happened. And he finally lets his emotions come out, and they cut back to him on the camera, and he doesn't. This is like, it's such a corny moment, but it's a very strong moment. He's just quiet for like a full 30 seconds of on-air time, and then he just goes, looks like it's just us. And then he like proceeds to do the news, and it's like, oh, like that's so, I don't know if something like that would ever really happen in real life, but it just feels so strong in that moment. You have to buy into it.
Yeah.
You have to buy into Will's arc for that to work, because otherwise it just feels very ridiculous. Like so much of those plots. But, Mackenzie gets to be mean also in this plot, which I think is kind of interesting, because her trying to talk Will through this is also intersected by Neil basically bumping into them and saying, hey, Will's getting some bad tweets, and I'm the Twitter guy because I'm the brown dude and I handle the internet stuff. He's getting like a lot of like mean tweets from a lady who said that he snubbed her at a restaurant or something, or like in the streets.
Which so doesn't matter at all. And the moment where Mac and Will are having a sort of smart talk and Aaron Sorkin conversation about the tweets. And she's like, what did the third tweet say? And he's like, you just lost a viewer. And then she's like, ooh, she's good.
She's good.
Like, what?
He cares so much. That's the thing, is you're learning he cares so much about what people think. Yeah. Like he gives off. I think I literally said this phrase today to someone out of context. But this thing with like really strong, quiet men like Will is that they're often using that to mask a lot of like insecurity and lack of like self-confidence and faith.
Sure. And
I think Will does have that. I think Mac often provides that confidence in him, and he does need her to tell him like, hey, you're good, dude. You're a good dude. and have all these other people tell him that he's great. So that's like why he's the one who cares about the tweets, and in the second episode, like he cares about fixing his public image and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause he does care.
Yeah, it just didn't feel that consequential that one person is saying bad Twitter things, because people are always saying bad Twitter things. Which is hard to get a sense in the show for like how much Twitter matters, whether or not we're supposed to think it's like stupid or a big important tool for changing somebody's reputation. Yeah, up in the air.
And I mean, speaking of these bad relationships and like people trying to feel out like, oh, does this person like me or not? We learned that it's been a little while since, like, literally last week. I was honestly surprised. This was the plot that surprised me. Like, wow, it has been enough time since Jim was on the campaign bus that A, we're barely talking about Genoa this episode. Like, literally the only Genoa mentions are in Charlie's little side plot. And B, him and Callie are like a very serious item now.
Yeah, that was odd.
She calls him baby and he calls her honey, and they kiss and they flirt on, and she's like surprised that FaceTime works again. They make that joke again.
Yeah.
It's like we're just supposed to assume that they like developed a really strong and healthy and good relationship in the whatever X number of days, weeks since he got off of us.
It just feels like there's not, like, it doesn't, Callie's character doesn't really matter to the show. It's more like, what does she need to be to serve Jim's story? And
entirely, yeah.
Right now, Jim's story is served by him having like a nice girlfriend and not the character that she was before.
Right, and she plays such the quote unquote nice girlfriend. Like, I think that actress is not incredible. She's really not given a lot to work with, though. It's just a lot of like say nice witty things to Jim. But basically his plot with Maggie involves him thinking like, hey, you like they spend their whole plot looking at a progress bar.
Yep.
That's in this episode, if I'm not mistaken. Because they get audio of the interview with George Zimmerman, or not the interview, the 911 call.
911 call, yeah.
Where he called in the killing of the Trayvon Martin situation, and then the police came, and then he took matters into his own hands and killed an innocent person. And first of all, like, that conceit is really dumb. I'm sure it looks good on paper, but just like everything is going on really busy, and we need to just justify these two people standing next to each other for 45 minutes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like often Jim and Maggie's plots have the most run into like the technological limitations of working in a newsroom. Because, they've had episodes before where they're like, we have to put this thing on film and then walk it to the other room. And now they're like, we have to download this. And Maggie says some line that's like, he's like, it's really taking a while. And she's like, it's because everyone else is downloading stuff. Like, I have to explain how bandwidth works.
Right. And it's just another plot to give us like oh, Maggie's messing up framework. Like, it's not downloading fast enough. And then when she edits it wrong. It's just kind of annoying. I'm really, really upset with how this show handled Trayvon Martin. As like the main points that it takes away from Trayvon Martin and his death are like, we're telling a story about the rich white guy who's sad about his dad dying. Like, that's the episode where we do that.
Right.
And the big snafu that they make is they make George Zimmerman look too racist.
Too racist?
And they're like, we have to, this is a big deal. We need to play the whole tape.
Well, I think the reason there is like they know he's racist, but they have to, and it kind of becomes more important when you consider the second episode's like the twist of the Genoa stuff is like, if we don't present the truth exactly as it is, then none of our message matters. Yeah. Like, what they cut out from the Zimmerman call is him saying, or they say that the dispatcher asks him, what does the man look like? And then he says he looked black. And it's like, if he just says that, then that's kind of that's like a weirdly charged racial thing to say. But if he's asked that, then it's just a response to a question. Like, it's an important difference, and it's an important distinction in terms of them getting their message across.
Right. I understand that, but the show gets to decide whether that happens or not. and the show is deciding that the important thing to talk about this case is that we need to make sure that we don't make him seem too racist.
Right.
And Will's interview with the woman about societal racism is like background for another scene that's going on, and
literally
taking it very seriously. And it's just not the discussion about race and about police violence. It's just not something the show cares about. Maybe it's because it's like just before the Black Lives Matter moment. But honestly, even if it had happened in that moment, I don't know that the show would have cared all that much.
Yeah, it's them actually handling this like really important turning point in America's history. They give no time to it, no effort to it, because they have way too many other things to do, and they don't put the right focus on it. To me, and this is my bias, my cultural bias, obviously. Not to say that any of that is not important, but the Syrian phone call is kind of awkward as well.
Yep.
Like, they take a whole real life, real problem and work it for about, I'd say probably 10 minutes of episode time across the whole episode for the purpose of a punchline.
Right. Yeah, they can't do anything about Syria, so instead it becomes a victory over like these opportunistic prank callers.
Baba Booey, motherfucker, is the line.
Like, what the hell am I watching?
Why did you do this? Because I wrote in my notes, when the woman calls at the beginning, it's like she's like, oh, I'm in this hotel, I'm in the W Hotel, and my husband is in Syria, and he's under the rubble of the explosion that you just saw on the news. And they're like, wow, we have to talk to you. We have to like take this very seriously, and you get to watch them go through the channels to do that. And I wrote something that was like, wow, her accent is like fairly accurate. And I feel like such a card for writing that, because they talk to her husband, they talk to, supposedly, they talk to her, they go back and forth, and then finally Mackenzie walks in. It's like the adult walking into the room and being like, hey, what, you're not at the hotel, are you? And they're like, what? And she's like, you're not at the hotel. Your husband's not there, is he? You're not Syrian, are you? Wait a minute.
Gotcha.
Baba Booey, which is what is that reference to? The guy with the big hair, Howard Stern. Because people would call in, and when they would say really nasty stuff, one of his guys would be like, Baba Booey, and like yell stuff. I might be mixing that up, but I know that's where it's from.
That sounds correct enough.
Yeah. Somebody can correct. I know we have a lot of like radio listeners, actually. So please, confirm that for me. That was the plot that I was like, man, y'all didn't even come on. Like, no effort.
Yeah. Just this whole episode is being pretty irresponsible with news stories, and kind of has a contempt for opportunists. That seems to be the theme, because it also has that minor side plot with the young man from Rutgers who wants to come out on the show or something.
So did you not? You said in your notes that you didn't get what was going on there.
I didn't pay attention at first, and then I couldn't figure out what real news item it was connected to, so I was a little confused by that.
I think I wrote an explanation in my notes so that I could remember this. Basically, that guy's name is Jesse. He was acquainted with the guy the gay student who lived in Rutgers and went to school there, and his roommate hacked into his computer and leaked all of his photos online. And basically, like, the kid was in the closet, and then because of this leak ended up being out of the closet, and as a result of the humiliation killed himself.
I see.
And this guy is supposed to be like saying, I'm a friend of his, I'm part of the Gay Straight Alliance at Rutgers, I want to speak for him. But he tweets something that's like, I'm sorry to all the parents that I'm going to offend. Matt corners him in the makeup room and says, like, hey, what are you actually going to do? He says, she's like, are you planning to come out on the show? He's like, yep, I was going to do it for my parents. And then it becomes this basically like really basic moral argument of like, I want to do it because Tyler didn't get to make the choice to come out. And so I'm taking back the choice. But she's like, you can't. That's so rude. That's so, like, first of all, you don't know this guy that well. This is just a guy that you're basically riding the coattails of his death for your own gain. Like, she's portrayed as the better character in that moment, and then basically shuts him down and basically tells him to fuck off and grow up, and then walks out of the room on her own terms.
And then walks back in and preaches at him some more
Yeah, like exactly. And
about how like Will is an amazing man or something.
pretty much, she's just like, yeah, Will's not that kind. We're not this kind of show. He's not that kind of host. Like, he's not going to let you do that. So you're out of here. Bye. He's like, I signed a waiver.
Whatever. Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of disappointing generally, but it still has the rhythm of like the Newsroom, and the characters are sounding cool and interacting with each other in ways that I like. It's just the news of it is very questionable. Trying to think, is Sloane and Don, their scenes are in this episode too?
Yes, that is in this episode. I was going to bring that.
Okay.
That's the last thing that I have to talk about.
So Sloane, basically, somebody was sitting around in the writer's room, or Aaron Sorkin was sitting alone, I guess. And it's like, what should Sloane be doing in this episode? What if someone leaked like naked pictures of her? Okay, yeah. What about economics thing? No, I think this would be good. I think this is a good thing for our like one of the few women on the show to be doing with her time. So there's this plot about how Sloane's ex-boyfriend Scott leaked naked pictures of her, and then we have to deal with that. And I think there is a world in which you're writing a show about people who are in the I guess it's the entertainment industry. I guess the news is part of the entertainment industry, or there's a parallel.
Yeah.
Women who are in this industry who have to deal with the fact that they are seen sexually sometimes before they are seen intellectually by certain people in the audience. And this was like definitely, naked pictures being leaked of somebody is definitely a real thing that people in the public eye have to deal with. So I think there's a way to do that plot and do it responsibly. I don't think this was it, but I guess I don't know what it would look like if it was the responsible version.
Yeah, you mentioned something in your notes about like, is this how we want to handle that plot? Like, is this the time and place to do this? Like it's challenging, right? Because the most like news biggest example of this happening was in like the summer of 2014 when the iCloud photo leak happened and all those celebrity photos came. So that was a little bit afterwards. So this is like a little bit. It's kind of trying to be very present and prescient, obviously, like the Newsroom so often is. But again, it doesn't have much to say. It's, if anything, the only thing I liked about it. Like, I didn't like that Don was involved. I really didn't like that Don was involved. I thought Don's contribution to this plot was worthless. He's just there to make Sloane feel good and to kind of, like, puff her up and also be, like, the guy who is the one good guy. Like, right, Sorkin so often makes
really weird role for Don to be playing.
Right. After all, he is a toilet.
Because he's like, why are you dating all these bad men? It's like, Don, you're a bad man.
Dun, dun, dun. And so it's just them sitting in a dark room. But what I liked about it was that Sloane is handling it mostly in a pretty mature way, at least early on. Yeah. Where like Charlie and Will like corner her or whatever, or Charlie and Reese, I guess. And she's like, yeah, I did it. I don't really regret it. I hate that guy. I'm trying to work against it. Like, I don't want to get fired for this.
Yeah, I did appreciate that. And I thought it made sense to me that she was sort of isolating herself and didn't feel like she could go on TV. So in that sense, that's why I'm conflicted about it, because there's just a whole world of plots that you can have as like a Sloane plot, and it does feel frustrating that of the few episodes that we have and the few Sloane-centric plots that we have, this is one of them, because it seems like so much of her character is more about the fact that she is attractive than it is about the fact that she's intelligent or
powerful or anything.
Powerful or, even some of her other maybe like character flaws that are worth exploring. It just seems like her attractiveness is more often a focus. So in that sense, it's frustrating. And then I just know who's behind it. That's what's tough about this is I could see this sort of story working in a show like this if I knew that there was a woman behind it who was writing it. But I know that Aaron Sorkin's behind it, and so it's hard for me to trust that he can do it in a way that's responsible. And then the ending I thought was just gross.
It's sort of like the end of the series plot where it's just like high five, nailed it, got him in the balls.
What do women want to do? They want to just totally let loose and go crazy and kick people in the balls and bloody their noses.
Big triumphant moment for feminism. It's super bad. It's written by a dude.
Yeah.
You just planted the idea Inception into my head that the Newsroom written by like a woman or like a queer woman would be the most level-headed smart show that it's trying to be.
Or just a diverse team of people, yeah.
Well, yeah, literally more than one person. Mm-hmm. We know multiple people have story credits. Everybody I've looked up who writes on the Newsroom is white. And primarily male. And that's all of Sorkin's writing team. Just bring anything. And this is why people champion diversity is not just because we want to see ourselves represented in things. We do, absolutely. But also we've seen this type of guy write this type of story a million times. Yeah. Sorkin has had so many shows and so many chances, and people just keep giving him shows. He's probably going to get another show in the next 5 years.
Yeah, probably.
That's going to be the same, and it's going to have the same exact problems.
Hallie's visit, that's the next episode?
Right? Yes, the whole, with Maggie and that stuff, yeah, that's the second episode.
Okay. Because just a point on the diversity thing also, is I would love for Gary to get more lines in the span of all of these episodes than just oh, Jim's girlfriend, tell me about your cocktail dress. All right, I'm going to go back to saying nothing now.
I'm going to go slink into the background. I just came back. The other line he gets is Jim asks him, hey, how long did it take you to recover from Africa? And then he's like, I didn't hold the kid that got killed. And he has that line, and then he also has yay, big cocktail dress, booby. In the same episode. What are you doing?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
That's not cool.
Gary's an embarrassingly rewritten character. And that line, I laughed at it because it was so absurd, but it's real bad.
Yeah.
That is it. We actually that was good. We just hit everything. It's a fairly tight episode.
Yeah, we bashed it a little bit because that's what we do with this show, I think. But it was structured in a way that was refreshing to me because it was very easy to follow. It got characters that I like in scenes with each other. I like Sloane and Don together, even though maybe I didn't like Don being in that plot. I liked the two of them playing off of each other. I liked Don's thing where he was a story's being attributed to him that he said sarcastically.
And
he has to clear that up and yell at the guy. I like that. I had fun
and then he calls
him
a fat ass, and then I hated him again.
Well, yeah, that's Don. And then, Maggie, Jim by the computer. They can sit there. They don't have to go anywhere else. That's good for me.
Yeah, I'd much rather that than their drama.
Yeah. There should just be more episodes that are told centered around an episode of the show, or told within the span of an episode of Newsnight.
Yeah, I want to learn about that process more.
Yeah.
And then just real quickly, final up before we go to Newsbag. In this episode, Charlie also speaks to a guy from the FBI, and they have cute Sorkin back and forth about hey, so that whole Genoa thing that I'm not saying happened or didn't happen. What are you gonna do about that? And it's just teasing the next. It's a teaser for the next episode.
Yeah,
fun stuff. So before we get there, we're gonna do a news bag, and then right after that, we'll be back to discuss One Step Too Many. Welcome back to the ChatzRoom. The second episode that we watched this week was Season 2, Episode 6, One Step Too Many. Written by the man himself, directed by Julian Farino, airing August 18th, 2013, and takes place presumably, I guess, March 17th, 2012, because the last one took place on the 16th.
Yeah, it seems to follow pretty immediately.
I have no reason to believe it doesn't. Magellan, hi. What happens in this episode?
Well, bro, let me tell you, bro.
Cheers, bro.
Yeah, cheers,
Cheers,
bro.
bro.
In this episode, Will makes an appearance on an ACN morning show. Jim meets old friends and foes when Hallie comes to visit. The ACN staff interview a general with knowledge of Operation Genoa, but Jerry's handling of the interview may prove costly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this episode, I texted you before you watched it being like, hey, bud, this is the one. Like, let's make sure we're ready for this because we're going to talk about it.
Uh-huh.
You know how last episode wasn't very Genoa heavy? This is all Genoa all the time, baby. And then also really bad Maggie drama.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say the more that Maggie's drama gets detached from Jim, which it's not to say that it is, but the more it starts to drift away from him, the more I find myself...
it is.
Yes, precisely.
Yeah.
Like her going to a bar, and it also happens to be a hotel bar, and then she also happens to start dating the bartender, is kind of cool, and she's like developing a drinking problem, but it like makes sense. Like,
yeah,
I don't know if this is cynical, but that is what would happen if I got into a bad breakup. Is I would just start like going, like frequenting a bar.
Right. You wouldn't go to Africa.
Exactly. It's weird that she did that and then
the campaign trail.
Yeah, that's only for strange people. And so like Jim is dating Callie, we get more of that awkwardness. I don't want to talk much about this plot because this episode really does boil down to those two plots. I don't think there's anything else big. So like, what did you think about the like Jim going to the hotel with Callie? I always forget which one it is. Yes.
I thought that more would come of what was her name? The Romney spokeswoman.
I never learned her name. I kept looking for it.
I keep forgetting what her name is. They like say it offhandedly a couple times.
Is it? It's not Nina. No.
No, it's not Nina because that's Nina Howard.
Taylor?
Yeah, that sounds right. I'm not going to say it because I'm not 100% confident, but that sounds plausible. I thought more would come of her being fired and sort of down and out, but not really anything came of it. Right? It was just that she said she was fired and they had like a debate about Romney and that was it.
Pretty much. I mean, it all ends up being it's the dinner scene. Like that's what all of that is, all of the Jim stuff is building up to, is the most like concocted awkward dinner scene of all time. Because
yeah, I thought like in the soap opera version of this show, or in the version of the show that doesn't care about Jim having to look like a good guy, Hallie goes on the plane and then he like hooks up with Taylor. Is that weird that I thought that was a possibility?
No, not necessarily.
I thought that's what was being set up.
It is correct, by the way. It's Taylor Harper. But yeah, so her basically at the dinner being like, I'm a huge asshole and my entire character is about me being antagonistic, and then also I got fired and now everyone suddenly feels bad for me. Just feels like unnecessary character work. Like,
right. It just made me wonder, why is she at the dinner? It didn't really make sense.
Yeah, what inspired her to tag along? I mean, I think they explain it early on that she's just
sad,
like,
and Hallie was like, "Come to dinner because you're sad.
Come on this like terribly planned double date." If anything, out of that dinner scene, I just wanted Neil to further rip into the girl who was a what's the candidate? What's the bad candidate? Ron Paul girl. But then I realized I should feel kind of bad because like that's just another like it's an Aaron Sorkin ignorant straw man character,
right?
For people to like espouse their intelligence at, because she's like, I was just a young up and coming news person like you, and then I discovered the brilliant candidate known as Ron Paul, and they're all like, oh, go.
It's also like shows the hierarchy of Sorkin identity politics, where like Neil only gets to talk about the internet unless there's a dumb woman in the room, and then
he gets to be the smart man.
Yeah, it's like, oh shit, this is all sorts of broken.
Yeah, and they don't really, fortunately, they don't spend too much time on. There's basically one scene where everything goes bad, and he's like, "You're super dumb, and you've completely drank the Kool-Aid, and you're supporting like the worst candidate."
Well, that's certainly up for debate with that particular crop.
Literally, it was up for debate. This is actually the episode with the cocktail dress scene. Now that I'm seeing in my notes here.
Yeah. Man, they spent more time on Rick Santorum than they did on Trayvon Martin.
It's true.
Like really, you're exactly right. Sorkin wants to set up people that he can knock down, and that's what it is. Like, there's nobody to knock down in the Trayvon Martin story.
He doesn't have the tools to say anything. Yeah, he doesn't have the tools to say anything about Trayvon Martin because this is a show where people get to sound smart. And like, if you said like, oh, we're gonna write a plot where these people sound really smart about Trayvon Martin, that's already really fraught and bad. Like, oh, we're gonna like talk down to some idiot racists or something. Like, is that what we want out of a Trayvon Martin plot? Like, not really. If anything, it's just Will in the background of the last episode being like, maybe that guy did have a point, and the lady's like, you're foolish, but they don't like lean into it. What they do lean into is like the making fun of like the people on the Romney bus and Rick Santorum trying to conflate religion with politics, and like every Republican candidate being a dummy.
Yeah,
that's like what that is. The show's bread and butter, like I said. I don't know. That's like what we said. That is entirely what the gym plot is getting to. It's just the girl being sad about being fired. They're all at a restaurant and getting to be funny white American people and being like, "This food is weird. Let's guess the food."
Yeah, like that was. Yep.
It really just felt like we went to a sushi restaurant.
What do you mean?
Right, you like. I've seen the reason I rag on that is A, it's easy, and B, I know people who do that. Where they'll like look at the menu and be like, "What is this? What crab with fish on the side? What?"
You have really sheltered friends.
Yeah.
What is this? What is this? A hamburger on a bun?
On a bun with mayonnaise? What is mayonnaise? Egg with sugar and salt? Yes. I think that is there's some Santorum. Yeah, there's the God stuff with Santorum. Will is hanging out with Nina Howard. What did you think about Nina Howard?
You know, I like Nina Howard being his nice girlfriend who like indulges his interest in publicity. That if we care about the dimension of Will's character where he thinks too much about his ratings, then it makes sense that he would want to date a gossip columnist and that this would happen. It made sense, and it seemed like it honored that side of Will's character. I didn't particularly like when he shouted at and scolded her and was like, first of all, I have to do this, and second of all, I have to break up with you, and they have to come in quick succession because... It's like, chill out.
I just don't like the way that Nina... It's exactly the same thing as Callie, where as soon as somebody dates you, they go from like your interesting intellectual rival to like your doe-eyed partner of love.
Who's like, you're amazing, everything you do is the best. Yeah, that's true.
Isn't it so weird that that's like a common thing in every Sorkin work? It's like, you are cool until you're dating me. Now you are boring and useless, and you serve me.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
It's a fair point.
I don't know if he knows how relationships work, honestly. And then, just finally, like, the Maggie stuff. I don't know, her dealing with this trauma by, like, closing in on herself, and she straight up tells Jim, like, the reason I drink alone is because I feel alone and sad and broken, and, like, I'm trying to cope, but, like, don't tell me. Like, it's almost the closest thing this show has to, like, a good feminist statement, which is, like, stop telling me how to cope with my own trauma. Like, let me figure it out. I know the way that I'm doing it is fucked up. I am self-aware enough and self-conscious enough to know that this is, like, self-destructive, but I'm gonna do it. You're not gonna stop. Like, I'm going, a guy buys her a drink, and instead of, like, sleeping with the guy, she says, like, thanks. And then it's, like, a weird, like, ad for, like, being a nice human being or something, where he's just like, okay, yeah, you can have it. And she's
totally get it.
I totally get it.
I understand.
Like, yeah, I'm just here by myself. And he's like, I get it. All
Very
right.
Cool. More power to you.
It's just that. It's such a strange bit.
I liked it, though. It was nice.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's how that could work. It is entirely...
Maggie can just say, thanks for the drink. We're not going to kiss. And he's like, great. That's fine. Okay. We're all human beings.
It is like the most aware the show has like ever been. It's very strange. What's this? Oh yeah, Dawn spends the whole episode with Mackenzie at a bar, talking about how he hates being the rebound for Sloane and how she dated a football man before him.
Oh my god.
Like I almost forgot that until I just looked at it in my notes because that all those scenes are just pointless.
Yeah, who
Pretty
cares?
much. I don't want to see Dawn be sad about Sloane not wanting to fuck him. Like, come on, Dawn. I like Dawn when he is like a cocky sleazebag. I don't like him when he is.
They don't really know what to do with Don right now because he's fully plucked out of the love triangle, which is good. But now it's like, oh, who
he's
was
unmoored.
he? He wasn't really anybody.
Yeah, he's unmoored from the plot, and so now he's just like they're just like grasping for straws with him. Like, oh, does he, go to Mackenzie for relationship advice? Does he kind of like become a like a handyman, like he did with the whole chair plot? Like, what's his story now? Does he become a good ally to Sloane, and then that is how he gets in her good graces to kind of like get with her? Like, where do we take Dawn? And
they like totally retcon the Dawn Mackenzie relationship this episode, I feel like, because he was talking about like, I don't remember what he said. And then she's like, I trust you, Dawn. I trust you with my life. And he goes, oh, okay. That's great. Because that was not how their relationship was before. They were not necessarily friendly with each other. But now the show wants us to think that they're friends. So I guess that's the new normal.
Absolute besties. I think there was a line it was from Sloane, like at the beginning of the season or something, where she says Dawn was used to being called the bad guy, and so now he has trouble like accepting that he is fine.
Right.
Like he constantly self-doubts because he's like, well, I am the archetype that people want me to be, and like how do I break myself out of that? So like in a way his plot is kind of nuanced, but they don't like stick to any one interpretation of him. It's very scattershot.
That's fair. Yep.
And then there's that really good scene where Will and Sloane are talking, which is another like rare character connection that you don't really expect to see. I forget what she's talking to him about, but she ends up they have like a very respectful, friendly relationship, and then he calls her sis.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, okay, yeah, all right. And Will also, spends this episode being like, why don't people like me? I get on this morning show, and they heard that I'm a good thrower. I play baseball well, so they're gonna make me play baseball on the show for charity. And then he throws it at the lights, and they're like, "You gonna trash my lights? You gonna trash my lights?" I fucking love that video. And then, he's like, "Why don't people? No, but come on, people don't like me." And they're like, "Will, you what? If you didn't care about why people like you, you wouldn't have showed up on a morning show. If you cared enough why people liked you, though, you would have at least tried to be nice. You're clearly not that far."
And Sloane tells him, like, people do think you're smart and they can trust what you say.
Just because your approval ratings for like kindness are bad doesn't mean that they don't like you.
Yeah.
You're a goddamn newsman, Will McAvoy.
Yeah, I like the Sloane and Will interactions in this episode. They felt really natural and funny, and I don't know, I liked them.
I just wanted more of that. Like, we're just close enough to the end of the show, and I know how terrible season 3 is, that like we're not going to get any much better than that.
Yeah.
That I'm like, that's the best that we get in this season, in this show, is like they treat each other with a modicum of respect, and it's whatever. I don't mean to constantly poo-poo the show. I want to find more positive things to talk about. I will say, just to pivot, I think the way the Genoa stuff wraps up is legitimately really compelling.
I agree. Yep, I agree. I don't think it was worth stringing us along for the past 5 episodes.
Dude. It's 2 episodes of plot strung out for 6 episodes.
Yeah, but the idea, I mean, there is a world in which the Newsroom could have worked as a show about like fictional news,
Yeah.
Like there's no reason that this should be a show about the real life news from a couple of years ago. It could just have been a show about fictional news that was allegorical to real life. I guess in the way that the West Wing was like that for politics, I'm assuming. I haven't seen all of the West Wing, but I would imagine it worked similarly. And in that show, like the Genoa storyline makes way more sense because then you're telling an allegorical story about people who force a certain narrative onto facts in order to tell the news. And that's what's going on here. That's something interesting to consider in this organization that put so much value on breaking the story first, on exposing corruption, on telling the public what's going on, of course there's going to be somebody in that machine or in that system who's going to twist things a little bit to make sure that the story comes out the way they want it to come out.
And how appropriate it is that it's an outsider. It's Jerry Dantana, the man who we have consistently lauded as like the best new character of this season, because he actually does his job and he actually cares. And so then we run into the question of like, what happens when you care about getting the point across more than you care about telling the truth?
Right.
So basically, the episode
being right.
Exactly. The episode starts with a red team meeting. The red team being the only people in the newsroom who are allowed to know about Operation Genoa. So that's like Mac. It is Maggie. It's Jim. It's Jerry.
No, red team is the people that they intentionally didn't tell before, so that they can pick apart the story and see if there are flaws in it.
Oh, that's why it's that's why it's the red team.
It was a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, it's like you need to be the unbiased, the closest thing to an unbiased source that we have.
Yeah.
Which kind of works against them in a little way, because Jim spends all these like red team meetings being like, no way, the U.S. gas against the Middle East, like what, guys? That's a war crime. That's impossible. You guys are wrong. Like, shut up, Jim. And Maggie actually gets to be the smart one. He kind of is like, how long have you known about this? And she's like, dude, literally months. And he's like, 7 months, and I didn't tell you, so I'm clearly good at this, and you're the only one left who's incredulous about it. Everyone here believes it. Like, come on. They have all these meetings. They basically recount the whole thing up until now. This is where I was like, this really could have been 2 episodes. This could have been like some build up and then this.
Yeah, and that's
we have our sources. We have everyone who knows, and finally, we find this guy Stamtanovich, who is a military expert who is supposedly aware of the operation. And we're going to go interview him after we called him on the phone and talked to him. And so Mackenzie and I believe it's Charlie initially go to his house, have a really stupid. First of all, I really don't like it when the newsroom goes outside. The lighting is like terrible when they're like outdoors. And they like knock over his trash, and he's just like a crotchety old man who's like, "Why are you here? Who are you?" And they're like, "Hey, bud, we talked to you on the phone. Do you want to do this whole important news thing? Because we're trying to have some like decor about it, and like let's not make this awkward." And he's like, "All right, let's do it." They come back the next day with Jerry and then Maggie, who is only there to fix the camera. But she has to leave because Nantanovich was never, like, he did research on Jerry, but he didn't do anything about Maggie. So he's like, I want my safety. I want my face blurred out. I want my voice modified. I want everything to work with me. You're going to let me watch basketball because I'm a weird old man who really likes, he's like, March Madness. Yeah. And they're like, oh, okay. In that case, yeah, you can watch TV. Which I get, like, they're in his house. They're by his rules. I understand that. It's just really, it's like a silly plot thing. Yeah. So they get the interview. And basically what happens is, as I remember, I really tried to pay attention to this because I remember this so vividly. Like, as soon as I heard the audio clip of him saying, like,
if we used sarin,
I, like, instantly flashed back to watching this the first time because they play it over and over and over and over again in this and in the rest of the episodes. That is basically the line. Is like, he's talking about, like, I know how the U.S. uses these weapons. I think, like, he compares it to, in basketball, like, you can't touch a person who's taking a free throw shot. But obviously, if the person had a knife brandished and they started trying to attack people, you would be allowed to use self-defense. And so that's his really ass-backwards argument for the U.S. being allowed to use chemical weapons in the Middle East. Is like, well, if they threaten us, then we're allowed to murder them. And by whatever means necessary. And then he posits this hypothetical situation Jerry is the only one in the room, which is also a weird oversight. Like, why didn't someone else stay in the room with him in the live interview?
Well, he said that they couldn't.
Like, no, like not even Mackenzie?
They had to go back to New York.
Oh, okay.
And they warned him. They only told Stamtanovich that Jerry was going to be there. So he, like, did a background check on Jerry and was ready for him, but hadn't done a background check on anybody else.
Right. So he just talks to Jerry and basically puts up this situation that's like, hey, so I know how sarin gas works. If we used sarin gas
Yeah.
Here is how we would do it. And here's what the operation would look like if we did that. And then Jerry's basically just trying, you get this cool moment of like, you kind of become in sync with Jerry's mindset of like, I need him to use the right words.
Yeah.
And Stantanovich is, although he's initially portrayed as like a dumb old man, he's actually played really well. Stephen Root, fantastic, very, very famous character actor, is like, no, hear what I'm saying. If we used sarin gas. And it's like such a perfect voice clip moment because you then cut to Jerry in the editing bay being like, if we use sarin gas, if we used sarin gas.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh god, that's it. He just did it. He just made the lies. But it doesn't really, like, it works. But Mackenzie is like, roll the tape back, play me the raw footage. And then he plays what he calls the raw footage, but it's still the edited tape, and gets it out there. It's Jerry's fault.
Yep.
Jerry did Genoa. So this then calls into question a couple things. So now the problem is, the final scene of the episode is Charlie being like, yeah, so we had all the evidence. We had tons of proof. We had this guy, this person, this information, this, and this guy in this interview.
At 10:05, I knew we had a problem. None of it was true.
Oh, fuck. We goofed, guys. Sorry. Yep. Whoops.
So how does it happen? That's the big question, and I'm interested to see it. I'll be honest.
Yeah, like what is the what is the truth then, and what happens now in the present of 2012, 2013, whatever, where this has aired? Because he says like we estimated 4 million and we got 7 million. A lot of people watched
1
this.
1 million and they got 4 million.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. But yeah.
Grossly overestimated. Yeah, I guess I don't remember what the actual truth of it was, but it's cool to see that it wasn't like somebody slipped on the tape or somebody misspoke. Like, nobody misspoke. This is entirely a conscientious effort from Jerry to get the story that he wanted to.
Right. Yeah, that's what makes this compelling, is that we're actually seeing a moment in which a character's virtue becomes his flaw. And he makes a decision that is wrong-headed.
Right.
It's like
and
a compelling narrative moment.
And he gets this incredibly, like, a well-acted scene where, Jim and everyone is like, hey, like, we shouldn't air this. No matter how much proof we have, we probably shouldn't. Like, so many people are going to, like, lose their jobs, and there's going to be riots, and riots turn into problems, and, like, international crises. Like, this can all happen if we air this.
Yeah.
And then Jerry is like, he has this whole moment about, like, this is a thing that is going to change the world. This is, like, history making. We cannot deny this to protect people.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like, all of the weight of that scene is undercut by Charlie being like, except for the part where none of it happened. And you're like, oh, that's cool. Mm-hmm. Something about that is really interesting.
Yeah.
And it's just such a bummer to me that we had, like, what are we on? Episode 8 of the season? Like, no, episode 6, excuse me. So we had, like, 5 episodes of build up to this.
Right.
And so it has a ton of weight.
This didn't need to be wrapped up in Jim on the trail. It didn't need to be wrapped up in Maggie in Africa.
Yeah, it didn't need to be wrapped up in the guy, like, getting drunk and falling off the roof or whatever.
Jerry Dantana's story. Because that's what it is.
Ultimately, yeah, it boils down to what's been happening just with Jerry. And the fact that we've been, like, conditioned to like him so much works in the show's favor. They are like, oh, this guy's, like, smart and does good work. Why is he also okay lying? Or fudging the truth, I guess. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see where it goes. We're going to see next week where it goes, precisely, specifically. Magellan, can you do me a favor?
Sure thing, fella.
Can you read for me the summaries of the next 2 episodes of the Newsroom that we're going to be watching?
No, but I can read you the summary of the next 1 episode.
Thank you. That's
You're welcome.
What I was going to say.
So we are going to... There are 3 episodes left in the season. It's a 9-episode season. So next week we're going to just do 1 episode in order to combine Election Night parts 1 and 2 for our final episode of the season the following week. So next week we're only covering Season 2, Episode 7, Red Team 3. Through depositions with the Newsroom staff, Rebecca pieces together the events that led to ACN's fateful decision to go forward with Dantana's special report on Operation Genoa, as well as the post-air revelations that undermined its credibility.
There we go. It's
All
exactly
right.
what we're looking for. Yeah.
Very nice.
I didn't even realize. I forgot that we just lined up the episode 1 with the weekend that I'm going to be out of town. So rock and roll.
Crushed it.
It should be a fun one. We'll try and make it meaty though to keep people from feeling like they got a short, shrifty episode. But yeah, it should be very interesting. So let's take it to the plug zone real quick before we go home, Magellan.
Let's do it.
You can find Chats, the podcast, on Twitter at ChatsPod. That's spelled CHATZPOD. You can also email us if you'd like your words to be included in the news bag by emailing us at chatspod@gmail.com. We love reading those. We love seeing those. They're very good. And if you like the show, please recommend it to your friends. That's how we get discovered. Post it on your favorite message boards. Post it online. And review us on iTunes. That is a big way that the algorithm pushes us up in the very crowded genre of TV discussion podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think we're pretty good. I like to think we're worth getting up there.
Yeah.
And Magellan, where can people find you online?
People can follow me or message me on Twitter at JustAFluke. That's JUSTAPFLUKE. They can also listen to episodes of my other podcast, Adulthood, which is about watching the movie Boyhood 15 seconds at a time and doing something with those 15 seconds. Yeah. Alan, what about you?
My my plugs are getting longer and longer every week. Basically, you can find all my stuff on Twitter at Alan Ibrahim, ALLENIBRAHIM. That's where I'm going to post about most of my stuff. I try not to self-plug too much over there. So just as a general sort of plug, you can find me also on 2 other podcasts. One is Fireside Friends. It's a monthly pop culture show. You can listen to it at firesidefriends.net. I don't need to talk about it. It's great. People like it. We're actually going to record an episode right after this. You can also listen to me on The Garnet Wager, which is a discussion podcast of the TV show The Genius. It's a Korean game show where they play games and have fun. We are also playing games and having fun. It's me and my buddy Six, and that is also on the internet wherever you listen to podcasts. So that pretty much covers my brand on the online.
Radical.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. You're welcome. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the ChatzRoom. Good night.